Hong Kong protesters are back on the streets tonight, marking exactly 12 months since a sea of demonstrators began a wave of anti-government action. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic briefly derailed protest momentum, but protesters warn their campaign far from over. Chief Executive Carrie Lam has warned that the city cannot bear any more chaos. She has blasted protest calls for a general strike, saying most Hong Kong people want a stable environment, especially during these tough economic times. And for more on tonight's protest, we're joined by Professor Joseph Cheng, a former professor of political science with the City University of Hong Kong. Professor, what's at stake with the looming national security law? Is Hong Kong's one country, two systems model in jeopardy here?
Probably so. You see, the decision to impose a national security law was made by the Central Committee of the party in its plenary meeting last October, probably in response to the political turmoil then. It implied that the Chinese leadership is willing to pay a heavy price for the maintenance of political stability. It is seen as the end of the one country, two systems model, not only by the local pro-democracy movement, but also by many Western governments, including the Donald Trump administration. The law will be imposed on Hong Kong by the National People's Congress without consulting the Hong Kong people and without going through the legislature in the territory. It creates a precedent, and the exercise may well be repeated in the future.
Professor Cheng, coming back to the protests then, how has this largely leaderless movement been sustained so far? And do you think the protesters are picking up momentum again as COVID-19 restrictions ease?
Probably so, in a limited way. It is expected that with the approval of the police, with the end of the of various social distancing measures, the pro-democracy movement will try very hard to organize one or two very large-scale protest rallies. And in view of the police restrictions, there may well be small-scale protest activities like what is happening this evening. However, the police are making a lot of arrests, and there will be a greater deterrence effect. So these protest activities will tend to be smaller in scale, more scattered, and so on. But the anger is certainly there. The dissatisfaction is certainly there. Around 45% of Hong Kong people are called zero in terms of confidence for the Chinese central government, for the Carrie Lam administration, and for the police force.
Professor, the national security law. Now, Beijing has assured the Hong Kong people that they have nothing to fear over this law. Are there any cause for concerns then?
Well, popular opinion surveys indicate that up to 37% of the respondents would like to emigrate. The real concern is that Beijing is getting very impatient. Beijing is willing to pay a heavy price, and Hong Kong is being reduced in its significance. Beijing is trying to develop Shanghai, Shenzhen, and now the Hainan Island to try to, not so much to replace Hong Kong, but to reduce the significance of Hong Kong. So the major worry is the uncertainty over the future of the territory. And there is a serious concern with that the erosion and the rule of law in the territory will be gradually eroded. And Hong Kong will soon lose its special status within China, and it may not be able to function smoothly as an international financial center. But meanwhile, the stock market and the property market seem to be doing exceptionally well, given the difficult political and economic circumstances.
And Professor Cheng, what do you make of the US involvement here? You mentioned President Trump earlier. He has threatened sort of sanctions on Hong Kong. What do you make of that, and what impact do you think that would have on Hong Kong?
It seems that Hong Kong has become an issue in the agenda of the White House concerning Sino-American relations. We believe that that in the bilateral relationship, long-term struggle, long-term competition will be inevitable. Although the Donald Trump administration tends to be rather transactional in its diplomacy, and it is entirely possible that the two sides may come to certain intermediary agreements, like the previous trade agreement, which is now being implemented. The real concern on the part of Hong Kong is that the United States and various Western countries may increasingly refuse to recognize the existence of a one country, two systems model in the territory, and various multinational corporations may try to manage their risks, so to speak, and at least move part of their operations away from Hong Kong and perhaps to Singapore and Tokyo and other places.
Okay, well, many thanks for your thoughts this evening. As always, Professor Joseph Cheng, former Professor of Political Science with the City University of Hong Kong.